Cooking with ground beef. Um, Ground beef is real versatile. Uh, and the kind of ground beef you get, I always recommend getting the 20% fat, or even 30, which is even better because most of your flavor comes from the fat. Uh, the wife likes getting 15% or 19% lean. So there's as you can see, this is really dry. So uh, to increase the flavor, you can add olive oil, or in some cases even butter. Anyway, we'll just stick with this basic ground beef. In any kind of ground beef dish, adding onions is always a good idea. It adds a certain level of sweetness. It also bulks up the dish. Adds more moisture to the ground beef. Okay. For basic spaghetti, you can use a pre-made sauce and just add it in. In this particular case, it's a ragu. I like to use diced up or stewed tomatoes because it adds a lot more liquid from the tomatoes straight into the sauce. A lot of people in the mainland like using tomato sauce or tomato paste. I feel that it overpowers the dish. If you really want a more authentic flavor, use fresh or even the canned tomatoes, and then you add roasted tomatoes, cut up roasted tomatoes, or sun-dried tomatoes for even a more intense flavor, instead of using tomato paste. There's more flavors in the roasted or the sun-dried tomatoes if you want a really intense flavor. But this is a basic dish designed for students, something that's relatively inexpensive. You can find it at any supermarket. So if you don't have the pre-made sauces, which makes it easier, just go ahead with something like petite diced tomatoes, either seasoned, pre-seasoned, or just plain. I always add in some Italian seasoning if you have it, all in one. You can throw in a couple tablespoons of that. In America, since we got introduced to oregano, we tend to use a lot of oregano. And then Mediterranean spices, which is your Italian spices, some bay leaves. And to absorb the oil and to make it more of a thicker sauce, we add breadcrumbs. And it absorbs the oil. It keeps the oil in suspension with the bread. Okay, kind of turns it into sort of a roux. So red spaghetti sauce is traditionally cooked for a long time, simmered over many hours, if not days. And to get that faster, thicker sauce consistency, we have a tendency to add breadcrumbs. You don't want to add too much breadcrumbs because it adds a more of a bready, pasty flavor to the spaghetti sauce. And if you have it right at the last end, add some Parmesan cheese. Okay, and if you got it, a splash of red wine won't hurt. Okay, that's for spaghetti. Now for chili, this is not the authentic chili. Authentic chili doesn't have beans, and it just basically is ground meat with chili powder. That's it. That's basically maybe salt and pepper to taste. But to kick it up a little bit, to add more heat, a lot of people add jalapenos, but we're talking about a student here. You might not have jalapenos because it's really expensive. So go with the white pepper or black pepper. White pepper tends to have more heat intensity and more flavor. The black pepper has a more appealing look to it. And then to give it a little smoky touch, a little bit of paprika. And to give it your heat, you get your cayenne. Okay, so in actuality, all you need is these two ingredients. If you really want to go for more authentic chili, it may not even have onions in it. From what I've seen, the way they make their chili, like down Texas wise, it's basically ground beef, chili, and a whole bunch of jalapeno peppers. which is makes it so hot it burns your tongue out and you can't taste anything anyway. So I guess some people like that. Okay, I want to taste my meat. I want to taste the vegetables, in this case onions in it, and I want to taste the chili, which is actually not hot at all. It's just the chili flavor and so forth. And it's a nice touch to have the paprika added a little bit. It adds a little smokiness to it. Anyway, and personally I prefer beans in my chili. Okay, you can add to extend it out or stretch it out. You can add a can of diced tomatoes. Okay, normally you don't see tomatoes in authentic chili, but all our American foods have been adjusted so much for our own personal taste. There's no harm in putting tomatoes inside a chili. I mean, if you're living in Mexico, you do it that way, but you know, here, especially in Hawaii, we put tomato sauce in our chili. Okay, so and when you're a starving student, you want to stretch things as much as possible. You even add breadcrumbs to even stretch it even more. Okay, and then of course for us people in the islands, we stretch it even more by putting all this on rice instead of using taco shells, which is expensive compared to rice. So you can eat this with a whole lot of rice, and this alone could feed 6 people with if you had diced tomatoes, lots of chili, and even breadcrumbs. You may even add beef broth to make it more saucy, more liquidy. Okay, so this is basic ground beef. And you can just add pretty much anything you want. You could even go with a curry powder, and then add some diced up vegetables if you wanted to add frozen chopped up vegetables, and toss it in, cook it in there, make it a stew style. Here in the islands we have stew style hamburger stew, which has the carrots and peas and green beans thrown in a tomato sauce like ground beef mixture, because the schools received a lot of ground beef. They never really received any steaks per se. It was always ground beef or beef ground up.